A fog-bound Ozark night. A waitress everyone knew. A blood-soaked Camaro on Highway 160. And a lake that kept its secret for 4 days. For 25 years, a privileged suspect smiled, denied, and walked free, until a single swab spoke louder than money or alibis. Fog rolls over Highway 160, swallowing the Ozark night. A Camaro sits abandoned at the shoulder, driver door opened, interior soaked in blood. 4 days later, Lake Springfield gives up a secret. The missing waitress everyone in Nixa knew by name. Whispers settle on a familiar figure with a gleaming two-tone Chevy and a family name that opens doors. He smiles for interviews, offers help, and walks away. Decades pass. Evidence sleeps in envelopes, waiting for a science the town hasn't met yet. When it arrives, a single swab will speak louder than alibis and drag a buried truth into the light. June 1985, Nixa, Missouri, where everyone knows your name and the Sail Barn Cafe is the town's heartbeat. 20-year-old Jackie Johns had just clocked out, the kind of shift that leaves your feet sore and your smile still warm. Hours later, her car turned up on Highway 160, door ajar, the inside spattered with blood and clothing tossed like a struggle no one saw. 4 days after that, fishermen on Lake Springfield found what the town had been praying not to find. A new sheriff faced his first nightmare case. Rumors fixed on a polished local with a distinctive two-tone Chevy and a family name that carried weight. He offered help, an alibi, and a steady gaze. And then the trail went cold. Decades ticked by, evidence slept, and grief hardened into ritual. Tonight we'll walk that foggy road, step into the cafe where Jackie laughed, trace the truck headlights witnesses remembered, and follow a single preserved swab as it travels from a box to a lab bench and finally to a courtroom. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments and settle in. This is the story of a small town, a relentless promise, and the science that would not forget. Jackie Johns grew up in Nixa, Missouri, a tight-knit Ozarks town where Friday meant cattle auctions at the sale barn and Saturday meant everyone knew how your game went. At 20, she'd found her rhythm: waitress shifts at the Sail Barn Cafe, late-night drives with the windows down, and a circle of girlfriends who swapped shifts and secrets. Regulars remember her as the kind of server who kept coffee topped off and conversations easy, bright, quick to laugh, and unafraid to meet your eyes. She was dating Cody, a soft-spoken ranch hand a few years older, and friends said she'd fallen hard. It wasn't a fairy tale, just two working people planning next weekends and paychecks. June 1985 started like any early summer stretch in Christian County, heat pressing on the asphalt, thunderstorms rolling in at dusk. On an ordinary weeknight near closing, Jackie finished her shift and left the cafe. Witnesses later place her at a nearby convenience store along Highway 160, the town's through line. From there, her night blurs. Sometime after, her car, a dark Camaro, was found abandoned off 160. Inside, blood spatter, a turned-out jeans leg, undergarments. Not the debris of a forgotten purse, but the marks of a fight. The new sheriff, 33 and freshly elected, walked into a storm. He cleared the boyfriend first. Cody's demeanor was hard to read, but his background didn't fit the profile, and nothing tied him to the car. Tips began to roll in, and one detail stuck: a distinctive two-tone Chevrolet pickup, white over powder blue, seen idling across from the convenience store the night Jackie was last spotted. In a town this small, that kind of truck was practically a fingerprint. 4 days after the car turned up, fishermen on Lake Springfield found a nude female body, afloat and unmistakable. The autopsy said blunt force trauma, signs of sexual assault, and, against the odds, a preserved semen swab. The sheriff did what small-town lawmen do best. He asked and he listened. Locals whispered a name that came with a polished smile and a prominent family business south of the cafe. The man acknowledged knowing Jackie, denied being out that night, and produced an alibi through his teenage stepdaughter. A brother's statement placed that same truck in a nearby field. A promised polygraph never happened. Without a lab match, without eyes on the moment of violence, the case settled into a drawer labeled unsolved. Holidays passed. Friends married, moved, had kids. Jackie's parents kept a room ready and a memory sharper than grief. The file waited, for science to catch up and for a promise to be kept. Deputies reach Jackie's Camaro on Highway 160, and the scene stops them cold. The interior isn't messy, it's violent. Blood spatter arcs across the passenger door and headliner. On the floorboard, a pair of women's jeans lies twisted, with one leg turned inside out, a detail investigators recognize from struggle. Nearby are undergarments. This is no stalled car or runaway. Whatever happened here was sudden, close quarters, and brutal. The sheriff locks the area down and calls in state crime scene techs. Swabs go into envelopes, prints are dusted, shoe impressions are photographed before traffic can erase them. Search teams fan out from the highway toward fields and waterways. 4 days later, 2 fishermen on Lake Springfield spot a shape drifting just off the surface. It is a nude female body. The distance, roughly 5 miles from the highway, fits the grim logic of someone dumping evidence and counting on darkness and water to finish the job. At autopsy, the coroner documents blunt force trauma consistent with multiple blows. There are signs of sexual assault. One set of puncture-type injuries lines up with the pattern of lugs on a common bumper jack, an ugly clue about what might have been used as a weapon. Against all odds, a semen swab is recovered and preserved. For 1985, that's a fragile thread, but a thread nonetheless. Back at the convenience store where Jackie was last seen, a pattern begins to form. 2 customers remember a distinctive truck parked across the street in a bank lot that night, engine off, backed in like it didn't want to be noticed. A white over powder blue, late 60s Chevy Cheyenne with aftermarket wheels. In a small Ozarks town, a 2-tone pickup that specific is almost a signature. The case has stakes now. Blood in a car, a body in a lake, a possible weapon, and a vehicle that doesn't fit by chance. But with no arrest and no lab match yet, fear settles over Nixa. Whoever did this moved confidently in the dark and might still be among them. Detectives start connecting threads to one name, Gerald Carnahan. In Nixa, everyone knows the Carnahans. Successful family, a foundry just down the road from the Sale Barn Cafe where Jackie waited tables. Gerald fits the profile of someone who moved easily in her orbit. He admits he knew Jackie, former co-workers say he flirted, and that she wanted no part of it. Then come the truck sightings. 2 customers place a white over powder blue late 60s Chevy Cheyenne, aftermarket wheels, backed into the bank lot right across from the convenience store moments before Jackie was last seen. A second tip is more intimate. Gerald's own brother reports seeing that same 2-tone truck idling in a hayfield near the curve by their parents' place. Steps, really, from where Jackie lived. He also says Gerald asked him not to tell police. Investigators bring Carnahan in. He's crisp, composed, and helpful. He volunteers an alibi. He was home all night. The alibi rides on a single witness, his 19-year-old stepdaughter, who says they had dinner and he never left. That story collides head-on with the truck sightings. Detectives ask him to take a polygraph. He agrees. The next day, he simply doesn't show. Without a lab match to the semen swab, the case can't pivot on forensics, yet. Prosecutors try a narrower charge, tampering, alleging he pressured the stepdaughter to cover for him. A judge dismisses it for lack of physical proof. Carnahan walks. And then a new case flares, an attempted kidnapping of an 18-year-old in broad daylight in a busy part of town. Witnesses say Gerald tried to pull her into a car. She fought free. He's arrested, convicted, serves time. It's not the Johns case, but it reads like a pattern. Entitlement, escalation, and the belief he's untouchable. By the late 90s, the file on Jackie is thick with statements, maps, and photos. The science isn't there yet, but the narrative gravity keeps pulling back to the same man in the same truck on the same foggy night.
Years pass. The hotline goes quiet. Tips dry up, and Jackie's case settles into the cold case cabinet, thick, heavy, and unresolved. But the evidence is never discarded. The rape kit, the bumper jack, the clothing from her car, the semen swab salvaged from a body that floated 4 days in Lake Springfield. Each item is sealed, logged, and revisited whenever science inches forward. By the mid-2000s, DNA moves from hope to horsepower. New amplification chemistries can rescue signals that old labs would have called hopeless, even from degraded, waterlogged samples. A fresh cold case team opens the binder and asks a simple question. If we can rebuild the profile from the 1985 swab, can we finally test the name the town has whispered for 20 years? They go to a judge for a search warrant to obtain a buccal swab from Gerald Carnahan. When detectives serve it, he's polished as ever, cooperative, controlled, until they say the name Jackie Johns. One investigator watches a single tear track down his cheek. The swab goes into a bar-coded tube. Chain of custody is signed. And because they fear he may leave the country, frequent trips abroad, a valid passport, the trooper doesn't risk a courier. He boards a plane with the evidence and hand carries it to the state crime lab in Jefferson City. Analysts cut open the aged envelope from 1985. They work the sample at night, cycling PCR, building a profile allele by allele. Every step is photographed, every transfer initialed. Then, at dawn, a phone vibrates on a bedside table. The lab's voice is hushed but electric. We have a match. The profile from the Lake swab and Carnahan's fresh DNA are the same. Statistically astronomical odds against coincidence. 20 years of rumor harden into science. The file that gathered dust suddenly becomes a blueprint for arrest and prosecution next.
Police move. Carnahan is arrested and charged with first-degree murder and rape. In court, prosecutors anchor the case to DNA, a semen profile recovered despite 4 days in lake water. Match odds in the quadrillions. The defense attacks procedure. The chain holds. Verdict: guilty on all counts, consecutive life sentences. For Jackie's family, it isn't closure, but it is justice and a lesson in preserving evidence until science catches up. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more victim-centered cold cases with clear forensic breakdowns and practical safety takeaways. New episodes, same promise. Truth, dignity, and detail. Justice landed, but grief didn't vanish. For Jackie's parents and friends, the verdict brought steadier breaths, not an eraser. What endures is a hard-won lesson. When a case goes cold, preserve everything and keep pressing. Evidence waits for the day science can finally speak. Detectives did their part by safeguarding samples. Years later, DNA closed the gap no witness could. Communities can help too. Document what you see, save dates and details, and keep asking for reviews of stalled files. Tell us where you're watching from. We read every comment. If you want more real, victim-centered cases with clear, step-by-step forensic breakdowns, subscribe. We post weekly. how investigators solved it, what finally cracked it, and practical safety habits you can use in everyday life. Thanks for honoring Jackie's story with your time.